All right, James, we saw the comment over under at 5 p.m. and we're off at 5 p.m. That was orchestrated, planned, and I mean, we'd been planning that from 12 minutes. 12 minutes we were here. But in all seriousness, y'all already know the drill. Familiar faces with me today. PG, Drew, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody, and then we will get this thing rolling.
All right. Sorry, I don't know if y'all can hear me. I switched to this a little late. Y'all can find me on YouTube, The PG Show, or on any of the podcast platforms. Listen, we're growing those, and they're actually growing at a pretty decent rate. So I'd love to have you guys on Google, Apple, or Spotify supporting the podcast over there. Those are going to be your longer episodes. YouTube's going to have pretty much everything, but we'd love to have you in both places.
Yeah, no doubt. Great content as always from my man PG. But Drew England, co-host of the Anything OU podcast. We tackle all things Oklahoma Sooner related stuff. You can find all that good stuff on all the major social medias and our YouTube channel as well. And then always, right now, by the way, hit that like, subscribe button for Ty. Get that going as you guys jump in here. And man, always fun to get with the boys and chat it up. So.
Oh man, always a great time. And this has been a little bit of an interesting weekend. This is a beautiful time in college football. 2024, that recruiting cycle is really starting to heat up. Visits are flying out. I mean, Oklahoma, the past few weekends, y'all have been hosting really key players. We're going to get to that. We've seen commitments. We've seen visits, spring practice nuggets. There is so much for us to talk about, and we're only having an hour today. So let's get right into it. Dang it, Matt. I do not.
Matt. So he
vicious.
loves PG. He loves PG, but you know, no love for the
he's vicious, okay. Man.
I got you.
I love it. I love it. But kicking this off, you know, we talked about some commitments that we saw this weekend. Alabama got a big one, and in one of the greatest showings of irony in recent memory, they get a 6'7" offensive lineman who weighs 280 pounds. Guys, I don't know if y'all have seen him. If not, Google Mason Short. Hey, looks like he could be the Hulk. But yeah, his last name is Short, and he's 6'7", 280 pounds, and is just a massive human being. I'm not gonna lie, this excites me a lot. Alabama's offensive line has left a good bit to be desired. Let's all be honest here for the past few seasons. And Coach Eric Walford, coming from Kentucky, has done a lot to change that. And one thing that I've noticed when I look at the offensive line, and especially offensive line recruiting under Coach Walford, he likes massive human beings. Mm-hmm. When I go back to his time at Kentucky, I remember very vividly a recruiting battle where Alabama was locked in against Coach Walford for Keontae Goodwin, 6'7", 6'8" offensive lineman, like 310 pounds, just a mammoth of a human being. And now you fast forward to Alabama, you see Caden Proctor, 6'7" last year. You see Ola Salinen, 6'6". I mean, you just look at the guys he's getting, and they are monsters. I'm hopeful that the offensive line can progress. This was going to be a massive offseason for the offensive line, especially without Bryce Young back there. That's a, conversation for a different day, but the offensive line is going to be so important. But Alabama, 2 commitments in the class of 2025. Class of 2024 for Alabama, they have some commitments. Not a ton of movement right now, but that's not to be surprised for Alabama. If you've followed Alabama recruiting, usually April, they're very quiet. And then after April, they just take off, and it is a sight to behold. But that's not exclusive to them. Guys, PG, I'm going to pass it to you. What was your thoughts when you see Bama get a big commitment in 2025?
I mean, the same thing I thought about Oklahoma. It's great, but it's almost 2 years away.
No doubt about it. No doubt about
and the same thing that we had happen with 2024. We got so excited for some of these recruits that were 5 stars, that were highly rated, but then they really start evaluating the talent, and the guys start progressing. It's like, okay, they're not what we thought they were. They start falling down the rankings. So, I mean, it's great. It's exciting for any fan base to get a recruit that far out, but it's kind of like a wait and see type of thing. Like, will that player stay committed? And I mean, I get it. Kevin Sperry loves Oklahoma. I'm not going to put all my eggs in the basket right now. It's too early. I think Bama fans should probably stay the same way. I think one of the only things is, it's like, if the player happens to want to reclassify, then all of a sudden you're talking, you're in business, because, well, if they're committed in 2025, more than likely they'll stay committed in 2024 if they decide to reclassify. But Alabama fans, you're talking about the 2025 stuff. We talked about it in the green room. I think Alabama fans should be more excited by the offer of Josiah Martin, the wide receiver out of Denton Guyer, because
My
I
backyard.
think he's going to be a sneaky wide receiver in this class. And somebody that I really want Oklahoma to pick up and potentially offer. They haven't yet, but he's got 29 offers so far. He's 6 foot, about 170 pounds. And yeah, he was taking passes from a 5-star quarterback last year. But if he can go out there and have a really big senior season without Jackson Arnold as his quarterback, then you're talking about a guy that maybe could jump into 4-star territory and be one of those hidden gems that somebody took early in the class. So that's one that I think Alabama fans should be excited for and potentially watch.
Yeah, and let's give PG his flowers right here. He's been on Martin for a long time. Really has thought a lot of that player. And so I do believe he probably will end up a 4-star. I think he's got all the ability to. When he inevitably does, be sure to stop by PG's channel. He was the first one that really told me, and I've seen Josiah Martin play. I knew he was very talented, but he has been adamant that this is a dude to watch. Drew, what are your thoughts, man? Big commitment. Offensive line, I love it.
Yeah, is Nick Saban still coaching at Alabama?
Yes.
Guys? Yeah. So, Crimson Tide fans, chill out. Okay, your boy is still there. Everything is still going where it goes. So, yeah. Don't freak out. The recruits will come, promise. So yeah. I mean, big time. So anytime you can pick up early ones, it's always good. But yeah, like you said, the floodgates will open, the dam will break, and you'll start seeing more and more guys, especially friends, guys that want to play with each other, stuff like that. And then other guys are just, vetting the process, just enjoying their time, enjoying, picking up some of these commitments, and then kind of as they come in, sorting through the riffraff. So let's be honest, you get a recruiting letter from Rice or all these other schools, you're like, oh, here we go. Put this one in that pile. Ohio State, Clemson, all this, put that one in this pile, all that stuff, all these other schools. Sorry about you. You guys didn't make the cut. And that's how some of these guys do it. They get tons of recruiting letters, and let's be honest, they're not really concerned with, Fresno State and all these other offers that they get. And so they, it takes them sometimes, and other guys are just like, yeah, I'm going to drop my top 8 or top 12 or whatever the case is. And yeah, you'll start seeing more of that, especially with these 2024 kids. And then as the 2024 class, irons itself out, then those 2025 guys will start taking visits and all that stuff. And then you'll start seeing more and more of those guys, I think, commit earlier. I think you'll see some of those guys commit in the 2024 year or the 2023 year. So, it'll be interesting. But yeah, don't hit the panic button, Crimson Tide fans.
Well, and there's something interesting about that because, and I forgot to mention this, the commitments go back down to 25 a year for each school starting next season in 2025. Yeah. So that might be a thing. You might see kids commit earlier because they know Alabama is only going to be able to take 25 guys. So get your spot early because it might not be there 8 months down the line.
Well, and then 2 things I wanted to talk about here. One, kind of addressing both of your points. PG, I completely agree. I opened up the video I did today saying, hey, we can acknowledge 2 ideologies at the same time, that this is awesome that they're in this early and that they've established a positive relationship this early. But we also need to remember it's over a year before pen hits paper for him. Mm-hmm. There's nothing but time and opportunity, and he's in the state of Georgia. We know how Georgia recruits. This kid, 24/7 Sports, their rankings in particular have him as a fringe 5-star, number 38 in the nation. The composite has him at 70-ish. So, he's going to be a player top institutions are after. So, be excited, but no, people are going to come after him. Luckily, we talk about some of these colleges, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Clemson. When guys commit there, you don't see a ton of decommitments from those institutions, just the way they go about it. Before we get into Oklahoma, I did have a second point, though, and it's really 2. One of them is a question for both of you. But before I get there, interestingly enough, Drew, whenever you're talking about don't be, concerned, it was a few cycles ago in April, Alabama was like 60th in the nation in recruiting. I mean, and everybody was hitting the panic button. I think they ended up with the number 2 class in the nation behind Texas A&M. That was Texas A&M's historic class. So it happens, right? I think last year, wasn't there a lot of cause from Oklahoma fans like, oh, why are we so low right now? And it's the way your staff does their evaluations. It's, we want to see it. We're going to have you camp here. We want to see what you're about, and then we'll offer. Guys who evaluate like that, it's a little bit different. Now, the question I have for both of you before we move into some Oklahoma recruiting nuggets, because there's some interesting conversations here. We talked about the word reclassify. Now, I don't know about y'all, but it feels like we're seeing a little bit more of that. Do you both expect that that's going to be a trend that I don't expect it to become commonplace? But do you think we will certainly see more examples of reclassification? PG, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think so with the higher tier players, guys that know that they have a future in the NFL, maybe guys that know that they're going to have a good NIL evaluation, because this is the other thing. I think so many people say, oh, well, this player's going to go here because of NIL. Like some guy went in my comments the other day about David Stone and was like, he was at David Stone, was in Miami for 2 days, and he's going to get his bag, and that's where he's going to go. I'm like, no, you're an idiot. Like, David Stone's going to get a bag wherever he goes.
Wherever he goes, yeah, 100%. 100%.
Like, but these guys know that they're going to get a good NIL evaluation, and especially like if they're in a spot where, you know, they're coming from like poverty or something, and they can make that life-changing money early, whether it's NIL or NFL, like, and they have the ability to reclassify and take it. Yeah, I would expect to see those higher tier guys to be able to do that, especially right now, where in 2024. They're able to take more than 25 commits in a class. I think it makes more sense to do it now because you can at least secure your spot at that school. In 2025 and 2026, that might not be there. It might not be available. So if you can make that move now so you don't have to worry about it later. That's kind of how I look at it.
Great point. Drew, what are you thinking, man?
I think that these guys are trying, especially now, because, you know, the old cycle and the old kind of way with, especially high school coaches, you know, we used to, you know, kind of how we prepped our kids was, hey, you know, come in, learn freshman, sophomore year, you know, really establish yourself, everything like that. Junior and senior year, you're really going to put your junior year, you really want to put a lot of tape together for colleges, because all your offers are going to come end of junior year or, you know, senior year, obviously, stuff like that. And your work is probably, you know, now a lot of these kids are being able to start and play a lot their sophomore years. And so they're positioning themselves earlier to say, hey, I've got a lot of film my sophomore year and my junior year, really standout year. And, you know, with their grades, with everything like that, they're keeping themselves on track so that they can, you know, academically reclassify. Because some of these guys, the only reason because they haven't is because they're not there credit wise, all that stuff. And so you're starting to see them put a little more work on the load on themselves their junior year so that they can have a potential, you know, early exit from high school, because they just want to, like PG said, they just want to go play ball. They want to get to the next level. They want to do some of these things. And high school, hey, I've gotten the most out of it. You know, I've squeezed this lemon as much as I could. I'm ready to go, you know, go big time. And so you'll start seeing a lot of these high-end kids, you know, start positioning themselves, moving to some of these IMGs, some other schools like that, prep schools, stuff like that, to, you know, and that's why David Stone did what he did was, you know, yeah, he could have stayed in Del City or whatever it was and did that. But I think that he wanted to, you know, kind of establish himself and be more of a high-profile type recruit. And that's why you're seeing some of these guys doing what they're doing.
Well, let me have two things here. One, James, I don't disagree for the masses. James says, I can see reclassification hurting more than it helps in terms of player development. For some players, I can see that, but there are some guys who are ready. And I think this is going to be one of those things where teams are going to be willing for a guy that's ready to allow him to reclassify, as opposed to if a college looks at a guy and they're like, hey, we love you. We think you need that extra year of high school. And hey, there are sometimes some, you know, high-ranking 4-star guys that they would tell, take that extra year, get your body right. Like, this is only a select few people like that could reclassify, and they're college ready now. We see this in basketball and stuff, and they can do it. But I think the physicality of the college game kind of dwindles down the list of prospects that could theoretically do it. Now, guys, I did want to turn to some Oklahoma recruiting, but I do have one more question, and I apologize. Drew, this is for you, man, because you're a high school coach. Do you think that we're seeing guys, like you said, be able to play earlier and in theory, guys that have the ability to reclassify because of the emergence of so many programs outside of the school? What I mean is, like, we look at C4 Sports, Sean Cooper, someone who does a lot of positive work in the Texas, Oklahoma area. Guys go to him and he gives them phenomenal training. Do you think that's playing a big part, that guys like Sean Cooper are popping up across the nation?
Yeah, I think you're starting to see some of these guys that are helping that process along and getting that further development in the offseason, stuff like that. Because, a lot of your offseason programs are great. Your workouts, your conditioning within the school, but guys that really want to step it up and go to the next level are taking these, personal trainers, personal coaches and stuff like that to help them continue, 7 days a week, 6 days a week, perfecting their craft and trying to get them to be as ready as they possibly can, so that they can potentially leave early, or they're just that much further ahead when they hit, freshman year, and they're starting to put together some of these workout plans that will kind of get you, try to get you acclimated to the college workouts and the rigors of that type of stuff. And yeah, you could try to get it as close as you can, but obviously until you're there, you're not going to really know. But some of these guys out there, like Sean Cooper, like some of these guys, they're the real deals, man. They can get you in good shape.
Margin hooks.
Absolutely. Like,
yeah.
And so, and for those of you who are listening, we're talking about a small percentage of elite guys that are doing this, not the whole. And I mean, there's guys that are going out there 7-on-7 leagues, all kinds of different stuff, trying to put their name out there, doing all that stuff. But we're talking
about national names.
We're talking about guys like Zadavian Sims at Durant, stuff like that. Like these top players in their states going out and getting this. And I'm not saying that none of these other guys can do it, but you're starting to
even think of like an RJ who was just on the show here a few days ago, played college football, had some stints outside of college football, knows what he's doing, and now he's giving back working with these guys. That's going to be massive.
And, yeah.
Massive.
And for some of those guys who have been through that process, no better person to go to than guys like that. So
yeah, love that, man. I just wanted to get your perspective on that, because it's something that popped into my head during the course of this conversation. Guys, like I always say, none of this is all just like throwing things at a wall and seeing what sticks. A lot of our talking points, they come organically through this process. But we will move on to a pre-planned talking point, Oklahoma recruiting. Now, this is something, guys, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're posturing yourself in really good position right now for several prospects. It is going to be a fun year of recruiting across the board. But I mean, some of these early battles are as exciting as I can think about. Just off the top of my head, April 7th, we have 2 commitments that Oklahoma are battling for. USC Oklahoma going head to head for Aaron Flowers, and then a quarterback that I think the stars are lining up for y'all to get, and that could provide a domino effect. PG, I'll start with you, man. Talk to me about Oklahoma recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, I think Oklahoma recruiting is in a really good spot. There's primarily a couple positions that I'm really looking at. The first one is the linebacker position, because you have Peyton Pierce, who, by the way, is not a 5-star, but if you go watch his film, Peyton Pierce is 5-star talent. And
as close as they get.
Yeah, and I expect that he will rise to that level throughout the season, surpass guys like Miles Graham and DeMarcus Riddick, who a lot of people are really high on. But Oklahoma also is I would say a pretty good position for a guy like Sammy Brown out of Jefferson, Georgia, right? So I'm looking at the linebacker position and going, okay, like what is Oklahoma going to do there this class? And then definitely the defensive line, because there's the potential that OU could grab 3 5-stars at that, which is just, it's mind blowing to think that Oklahoma could do that, right? David Stone, Williams Nwaneri, and I still believe Nigel Smith is potentially a 5-star talent. That's kind of where I'm getting at.
He's right
Not
there, no
thinking-
doubt about it.
Yeah, not thinking an Edric Houston, who probably is going to end up at Georgia. But, those are probably the primarily two positions that I'm kind of waiting for the first commitment to come through. I mean, you've heard rumblings. I think people are too worried about David Stone and how he builds his brand, because I know people say, well, he tweets out about all the other schools. Listen, he knows how to build his brand, right?
He's getting them followers.
Yeah, as a 5-star guy, if you're going to 405 Burger Bar in Norman, you can say, hey, I have 20,000 followers on my Twitter and my Instagram. That looks really good. That looks really good to a business. So that's how you guys have to look at it, because at the end of the day, you're going to hit follow on that recruit. I'd say 90% of you guys are less likely to hit unfollow once they commit somewhere else, because you'll just forget. So let's just keep that in mind here. These players know how to play.
Certain fan bases will not forget. They'll make sure to unfollow that one. So
I know lots of OU fans that just will not unfollow. They'll just forget because they don't pay attention. But no, I mean, I think OU's fine. I see Matt asking about Flowers. I think Aaron Flowers eventually ends up in the class, but I think he'll end up being a USC commit off the top on the 7th. But it's going to be an interesting battle to see Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley finally end up in a recruiting battle that's like solely between the two programs. But I know some people were concerned about James Peoples committing to Ohio State. I don't think there's anything to worry about there, because that probably means Oklahoma's got their 2 running backs already committed, just not publicly yet. So I think we're going to be just fine there. Yeah. Happy for James. I've talked to him multiple times. I'm excited for him to be there. So I think the biggest question now is, where's Stacey Gage going to end up? Because I think a lot of people expected Gage to end up at Ohio State. And then obviously Oklahoma fans were looking at Gage. So it's like, does he still go to Ohio State? Or now does he primarily shift his focus to Florida or Oklahoma, now that, James Peoples is there and probably will be running back 1 in this class?
Yeah. And to go off Matt's question here, I think Williams, Peyton Pierce are definitely really good. Kobe Black maybe a little bit tougher for Oklahoma to land, but certainly 2 out of the 3 for those 3 guys is not
nobody
not bad.
Complains.
So, but other guys, and talking recruiting, PG touched on some defensive guys, but there are some 3 and some 4-star safeties planning their visits for the spring game coming up. Most notably, Jaden Hardy will probably most likely be in town, and then was it Michael Banowski?
Yeah, but
not
he's
exactly
going to be
sure
a linebacker.
So, but yeah, I'm talking about he's planning a visit for the spring game. So some guys that safeties, stuff like that you'll see, and then I think one more that is actually in a battle with USC as well. He's from California kid who's a 3-4-star safety as well. You might see some of those guys, and then you'll see some other guys in town on the 22nd for the spring game. So a lot to be excited about. And then offensively, there's some receivers out there, and then obviously most notably here in the was it Friday? Everybody's waiting for Michael Hawkins and a couple other people to announce what they're doing. So yeah, really could be a really good week for Oklahoma, and then continuing in the month of April, may see some more guys, pushing their interest to Oklahoma a little more serious. So
well,
yeah,
I'd like
listen,
to hit
you guys
this
should
right
be
here
excited
a little
about
bit, PG. Let me take this real quick and then I'll pass it to you, because when I look at this, Drew, you said you think they could get 2 out of the 3. I completely agree, and I'm not saying it's an impossibility at 3 out of 3.
No,
but I want to first talk about Williams and Nwaneri, because when I look schematically, that dude right there is such a beast. I mean, he is so gifted. He makes sense in Oklahoma's scheme, right? Like I'm
not laughing at you. I'm laughing at Matt's comment.
No. When Williams and Nwaneri, he makes sense in the Brent Venables scheme, the Todd Bates scheme. That's a guy you look at, and I think he makes so much sense for
Mhm.
Oklahoma because they can tell him, hey, we can bulk you up and play you inside. We can keep you a bit leaner, keep you out. We have a lot of flexibility for you here. What do you want to do? And I think he has that elsewhere, but it's just the way Venables calls that defense that I am really interested in him. Don't get me wrong, David Stone, the long-standing relationship with
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Well,
I
we
mean,
know his skill set, what type of player he already is. But
no
I
doubt.
agree with you, Williams Guarneri, very versatile. He's got
Really
the body.
intriguing.
He's got the body type that could turn into an edge guy or even an inside type of player. So yeah, I agree with you.
I was shocked he wasn't an edge.
Yeah. So
When I first looked at his measurements, I was like, "Oh, you're an edge," and then I watched him. I was like, "Oh no, you're doing work on the interior. You are a really interesting player to watch. He's fun. His film is so much fun to watch." Go ahead, PG.
Williams is going to be interesting because I will say this: OU is still the leader in this recruitment, but Nebraska might be making a good run here because they had an impressive visit. So
yeah. Ty, will you be around Norman for the spring game?
Probably not.
Come on! I got a ticket. I got a free ticket.
There's multiple spring games happening on the same day, man.
Hey,
but you're not going to
all
Tuscaloosa.
happening.
Come on.
I actually might.
Save that trip for the season. Save that trip for the season.
Hey, I envision in the future us all taking a trip to either, Norman, of course, but Tuscaloosa.
Oh no, we're all going to Tuscaloosa. That first time OU goes there, we're all going.
That's gonna be so much fun. That's gonna be so much fun.
We may even do a little. I don't. Who knows what'll happen that weekend?
Oh no! Listen, I'm already telling you what's gonna happen. We're gonna have a live show. We're gonna get where we will find a way to get a desk out there. We're gonna do a live show on Friday.
No, we'll just hop in a hotel room somewhere.
College game day. We'll look out.
Okay. Listen. I am sure Alabama will let us do a show in front of their stadium the night before.
Inside during pregame, come on.
Who wants to go to Texas?
Matt,
I would. No, I'm not gonna lie, man. I don't know the timing of everything, but you want to talk about an interesting team this offseason. The Horns have got to be up near the top, man. Got to be. Now, I do want to talk about the Longhorns. I'm really excited for the Longhorns, but I also want to give the due diligence to this conversation about Oklahoma recruiting. And PG, you brought up some names, and Drew, you did as well, committing on the 7th, specifically a quarterback, because I think we agree here. Flowers will probably end up being a Trojan on the 7th. Whether he remains there, remains to be seen. I think there is a guy committing on the 7th that is going to end up a Sooner. PG, you want to talk to us about that?
You talking about on the 8th or the 7th? The 7th is Aaron
Hawkins.
Flowers.
I thought Hawkins was the 7th as well.
No, Hawkins is the 8th. Aaron Flowers
is the 8th. Okay.
So, no, I mean, really though,
gotcha.
Everything you're hearing, the 7th, Aaron Flowers could be USC. But who knows? Because his relationships with the staff at Oklahoma, everybody will tell you, is incredible. And I know USC people, they'll jump in the chat and tell you, well, we put out a ton of great safeties. Well, great. You've put out a ton. Keyword put. You don't have those same people there. Alex Grinch and those guys, I don't think are going to be able to do it. So we'll have to see if he really ends up committing to USC, and if he does, if he sticks with that commitment. Because, with Venables and the staff, they've proven that they can put guys like him in the league. Alex Grinch and this staff have not. When it comes to Michael Hawkins, he has been to Oklahoma again this past week, which pretty much tells me he's going to be a Sooner. He's been here so many times. I believe Oklahoma is one of the only 3 schools that has offered his brother Malik Hawkins, which, his dad has specifically told schools do not offer Malik, unless, it's for Malik's sake. Like, unless you really want him, don't offer him for Michael. But, OU has done their evaluations and, they really like Malik. And so
interesting little nugget here as well, PG. While we were on stream, I think right as we were kicking off, a crystal ball was inserted, and I'll have to go to 24/7 Sports, but in favor of TCU, not for Hawkins, but for a different quarterback in the class of 2024. Take that as you will, but to me, He's committing on the 8th. He was in Norman the weekend before, and now a crystal ball has been inserted in favor of a separate quarterback in the same class for the other school y'all are battling for. Now, TCU could take 2 quarterbacks. I'm not saying they couldn't. You know, if you're reading the tea leaves, you can excuse me for coming to the result I'm coming to. Right.
No,
And
yeah. I mean, you've got the right tea leaves there. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, though, because I know Oklahoma's wanting to take 2 quarterbacks, and you've got Samaj Jones wanting, in his Oklahoma in his top 4. What does that look like for Oklahoma with Michael Hawkins and Samaj Jones, right? Do they actually both want to compete with each other in this class for QB1? That's going to be interesting to me.
Drew, you seem like you have something there, buddy.
I do, and it may piss some people off, but I'm just going to say it. I am not high on Michael Hawkins. I haven't been.
Interesting.
But that's interesting because I had a guy in my comments yesterday, which I think I sent in the group chat.
I'm not saying that he's not
Arnold.
No.
I'm right there with you. The dude
is
probably.
I'm not saying he doesn't have a great skill set, everything like that. But look at the way he struggled against a really good defense against Geyer. Look at some of the reads that he makes. Look at the athleticism that he has, and more often than not, what does he do instead of throw the ball? He takes off and uses his legs, which is not a bad thing. But at the next level, you're not going to be able to get away with just taking it and running all the time.
Well, one thing I do know, because I don't know a ton about his film, I know his ceiling is really high.
He's got the potential, really, but I think he still is a little rough around the edges, and he needs to go and get developed. He needs to sit a year, definitely. I don't think he's one of those guys you can just throw right in the fire and go. So maybe that's a great, it could turn into a great situation for him. But I could potentially see him, maybe struggle, maybe do some things like that. Maybe Jackson Arnold stays for a few years and becomes the quarterback that we think he's going to be. And you see a guy like Michael Hawkins end up transferring somewhere, I don't know. I'm not as high as most people are, but at the end of the day, I still think he's got a lot of talent. He's got a chance to really, have a good career, but he's not one of those, Caleb Williams, wow, like type of players.
And rarely are there. Yeah, rarely are there. No doubt. That was one point I was about to make. Those guys, man, they are a dime a dozen. The other point I was going to make, and I'm getting ready for the tomatoes to be thrown at me, and I'm prefacing this, right? He has made some really nice throws here recently in this 7-on-7 circuit. I know 7-on-7, it's 7-on, and I'm saying that statement, acknowledging that truth, right? Like acknowledging that it's 7-on-7. You don't have 11 guys rushing at your head, but man, he and Mitchell have got a really fun connection to watch on a lot of these clips. But hey, Guts was saying I was thinking the same. Days. Well,
let me ask you this. Days,
yes,
King and Martinez, how really they had a lot of talent, but were they top quarterbacks in college football? When you started going down the list, were they ever considered to be really top high-end quarterbacks in college? No, they weren't.
Man, I would love to do the interviews. I just have such bad social anxiety. It's the worst. Yeah.
Hey, if you want to go see some. If you want to go see some great player interviews, head over to PGA. But if you Sooner fans, you want to go see some interviews from former players, stuff like that, legends, all that stuff, go check out our Anything OU podcast. We have a lot of cool interviews back we just had Mark Clayton on. We had Tommy Harris. We had a bunch of other guys that are on there that are really cool. But yeah, current recruits, stuff like that. You want to go talk to PG's the man for that. He's got some great stuff there.
Listen, maybe Ty and I could get an Alabama commitment. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to talk about that. I got a guy who's committing here on the show. We're gonna do a live for him, and Alabama's on his list. So
guys, go over to, I know I'm plugging it again, but mid April. You're going to want to hit your bell for notifications and subscribe to our channel. I'll just say that.
Yeah, a lot of big things coming up.
This is a current head coach in college football. I will say that.
Is it Steve Sarkisian?
Yeah, no.
Well, speaking of, we need to talk a little bit about Texas because I do want to talk some Big Ten today. Really interested in some Big Ten, especially with the commitments they're getting right now. Michigan, Ohio State. I think we
See,
have
you
an
need to
interesting
change this from
conversation.
set to need to.
No, you are certainly not wrong. You are certainly not wrong, my friend. But here's one thing, man. Texas is intriguing me right now. They
I will
lose
admit,
Bijan.
I know. I'm with you, Ty. Hopefully, I don't get things thrown at me, but I'm interested to see what this season looks like.
Look, if you had no team in the Big 12 and you were looking at this and you were like, okay, who's a short list of teams that could win the Big 12? In my opinion, Texas is on that list, right? Like they certainly are this year. They have to replace Bijan.
With the level of talent that they have, there's no reason not to include them.
There's no reason not to include them. I 100% agree. Bijan is going to be tough to replace. Now, I like the running backs they have, but Bijan is special, right?
Yeah,
and I don't.
You're replacing a generational type talent at running back.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yes,
yeah,
Matt.
Texas has got some great pieces to replace
yes, Matt.
them.
Yes, Matt. Very, very fair point.
Yes, no doubt. This is a little different in terms of it's a culmination of Sark's building, and
you're starting to see that needle, like you talk about, that needle move a little bit.
Yes. Texas, I don't disagree, Matt, but like we always say, it's the way the team is built.
Matt's got to chill here because here's the deal, Matt. Sark he's been changing this Texas program by getting trenches players, which is something a lot of the past coaches haven't been able to do.
You're starting to see the development.
Yes, and you're starting to see the development. This year, you're going to see a Sark offense like what they had at Alabama. That's what you're going to see.
That's the question mark for me. Are we?
No, you're going to see it this year. Like they have too much. They have too much.
This is why this is going to be fun. This is great.
Not go out there and get the right quarterback out there. Cedric Baxter is going to have a good year because he's got a great offensive. I mean, I say great offensive line.
Offensive line, I agree.
3 offensive lines in the country, so he'll be fine. Cedric Baxter will be fine, and then the Alabama or the Texas defense is going to be perfectly fine. You've got edge rushers now. You have a great linebacker in Anthony Hill, who everybody in the country wanted. Texas, this is the year that Texas puts it together. They're going to be in the Big 12 championship, guys. I'm telling you now, they're going to be there. They might win it depending on who they play. So this is the year Texas puts it together. If they don't, I don't know if Texas will ever be back because
one big question mark that you forgot to mention though was what Ty just said. Who is going to be the bell cow at running back?
It's going to be Cedric Baxter.
He is not experienced. That matters.
Here's the thing, though. He's going to be running behind an offensive line that, I mean, they're just going to be able to move people at will and create those holes for Cedric Baxter to be able to run
but
them.
Ball security, stuff like that, you're not going to know that until he's in the fire. And I'm not trying to wish ill will on the guy, but practice reps are way different than getting into a Red River game or a big time game like that. And certainly he has the skill set. I'm not knocking him, but that is a big question mark because when you're talking about replacing not only Bijan, but Roschon Johnson as well, that's a lot of production in the backfield.
Yeah, luckily they keep Keelan Robinson, who I think finally could be set for a big year, being a really dual threat running back, very active in the passing game, very active in the rushing game. I think
also, too, for those young guys, learning how to pass protect as a running back.
You got to block. You have got to block. And that's one thing I'm interested for Oklahoma, not to make this an Oklahoma conversation, y'all's tight end position, because Willis, doing my watch through, I have charted so many times and I'm like, man, this guy made a key block that got a touchdown, that got a huge gain, that set up a touchdown. I mean, he had some massive moments last year that the stat sheet will never show, because it doesn't account for key blocks. What Texas running back is going to be able to do this? Now, what I will say is Jonathan Brooks is a physical dude, man, a bulldog through and through. I am so interested. The quarterback room, They've got Quinn. Someone asked, is it going to be Arch? It's not going to be Arch. The Mannings were very forthright that they were perfectly fine with Arch sitting a year and learning. They actually were like, hey, that's probably
and honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if Peyton is out there telling the Texas coaches and these Texas boosters, Arch will not play this year. It'll be Malik Murphy and it'll be Quinn Ewers.
Why would his uncle be singing?
Because let's be honest, Peyton's probably got the most influence out of anybody out there that could say Arch isn't going to play.
I don't know. Cooper's got a lot of pull, and Peyton and Eli kind of tend to stay out of that their business more often than not. You'd be surprised, and it's more grandpa and dad that are really, helping the cause.
But back to the point, shifting back to the offensive line with the running back. I just don't see Texas having the problems at running back that we all expect. I mean, they've got easy games against Rice and Wyoming. They'll have that hard game against Bama. That's probably where Cedric Baxter will make mistakes. I still expect Texas to lose that game against Bama, but you'll see Cedric Baxter make mistakes in that game, and then they have 2 or 3 weeks before they can, or 2 weeks before they can clean it up before they play Oklahoma. They've got 3 weeks. You got Wyoming, Baylor, and Kansas before they have to play OU. So I think Cedric Baxter will be able to put it together because, guys, that offensive line for Texas is going to be great. And I saw somebody mention in the comments there that they paid for that offensive line, and I hate that argument because everybody else is paying for their teams. How is what Texas is doing any different from what Oklahoma is doing with their players? Because Oklahoma's paying their guys $50,000 a year to be on the team. Now, yes, they have to do specific things to earn that money, but how is that any different from Texas playing their offensive line, guys? I don't like that argument. People got to stop bringing that up because the offensive linemen can come to OU if they want to, if they really want to. Kyle Flood is just a recruiter. That's what it is.
Here's another game that is most notable early in the season for Texas at Baylor. That'll be a good one after Wyoming.
Well, but the thing is they have enough. But see, here's my difference between Baylor and Alabama. Alabama, it doesn't matter how much talent Texas puts on the field.
PG, that's a dumb. Don't even go into it.
With as much talent as Alabama's got in the field and Texas will have on the field, Alabama's just going to outmatch them. Texas,
no joke.
Even if they have problems at the running back position, they should be able to overcome it with all of that talent they have at the wide receiver position and the quarterback position. Talent
only goes so far and the experience and the depth has to kick in. Like you could run a 4.4 or a 4.2. You could be the fastest guy in the world, but if you can't catch the ball, you're not going to play. That's the bottom line. You have to have all of it put together. You have to have the head and the talent. And I'm not saying that none of these guys do, but I'm a show me type of person.
Yeah. I have a hard time not seeing Texas put it together this year. I'm just like, there's too many things working for them not to put it together.
I believe it when I see it.
Guys, go check out F is for Fanatics. Great Florida content. Someone who's a friend of the show will absolutely be back on, and that is our Florida plug. High Top Sports, giving you great SEC action. They're absolutely people you want to follow. I did want to hit this comment. Matt says, how many times has Texas out-recruited OU and Texas gets destroyed? Makes zero sense to me. And Matt, I think RJ, and once again, guys, RJ Moore Malone, he was on the stream a few weeks ago. We've talked. I'd like to get him on at least once a month. So very soon he will be back on. Former college football player, played in the SEC, played in the ACC, went on after that, and now helps.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That was my point.
This is exactly it. Yes, this is. Yep, he mirrored exactly what you said, Drew. But they would be.
And I'm not knocking these kids by any means. No, I'm not trying to say that these guys are.
No, it's the evaluation.
It's the nature of the beast.
Yes,
the 100%. Elite of the elite. It's goes from high school to college, and even these elite guys in college sometimes don't more often than not make that transition to the NFL. It's just how it goes.
No doubt. And when we look at Texas, I've always said this. I always shout out Nino's video because I think it's so important for people to watch. Oklahoma would lose to Texas in the recruiting rankings and rankings alone. Whenever you'd look at the structure of those classes, they were much more comprehensive than the Texas classes, especially here recently before Sark. The Texas classes weren't recruiting with the congruity that we see with they are doing right now, right? Like, we don't see Texas taking so much skill positions. We see Kyle Flood doing a lot of great work on the offensive line, Bo Davis getting some defensive linemen, to where when we look at the class, we're like, that is a foundation to build a house. And upon this house, we can build something lasting. Oklahoma has been king of that for a long time. A long time. And so, Matt, you're right. They would rank better in recruiting, but Oklahoma would be doing a much more thorough job of recruiting. And the reason why, I get it, we say Sark hasn't had the wins. They have done a phenomenal job of doing smart recruiting and recruiting to their needs. And like Drew said, they're developing.
That's it. That's the word right there. It's these programs. The reason why they do it is they squeeze the juice out of these guys. They get the most out of them. The reason why, it's not only because Saban gets these great 4 or 5 star guys, but I guarantee you he got the most out of Clinton Dix. Some of these guys that have been through the program, they have that high level of talent. He just pulls more out of them. And that's why you see a lot of those guys translate to the next level and onto the NFL, because it's just the way you develop guys. It's that mindset. It's that physicality. It's that IQ. It's certainly the on the field play. But these guys, that's why they continue to be great. And that's why these guys go to these programs. That's why you're choosing these blue blood programs, Clemson's, Georgia's, Ohio State's, Alabama's, Oklahoma's. Texas is on the uptick a little bit. But that's why you see more often than not, these races are down to 5 to 8 schools, because these programs develop their guys and get to the next level.
Yeah, no doubt. And Blood, I think we all completely agree here. It's going to be a really fun year for Oklahoma, and they will be getting better, no doubt about it. Staff had a game that dominated the conference. Never knew. Yeah, Trojan, don't get me wrong. Lincoln did a great job in the Big 12 and the consistency there. No doubt about that whatsoever. No doubt about that.
But back to my point, what happened when we went up against these other elite programs?
Yeah, that's when the complete recruiting showed. Whenever it's like, okay, well, we have the offensive 5 stars and the defensive 5 stars.
We've got pieces, but we never had the full puzzle.
If they get a defense, my God. Oh, and I've said this, Trojan, I'm super intrigued because, like I talk about with Oklahoma, Brent Venables inherited a situation that wasn't the best, but so too did Grinch and Riley, right? Like, they got some big pieces coming over there. But that Clay Helton team, nobody looked at that and was like, that's a playoff team. Yep. And so I am sympathetic to that, right? I am sympathetic. That was Grinch's first year, and we need to be patient to allow him to implement his stuff. And I love that y'all retained Coach Williams. I think that was
huge
one of Riley's best decisions since going to USC, is retaining Coach Williams. That's an awesome decision. But guys, we got about 12 minutes. PG's got an interview coming up here this evening. I want to be able to get you over to that, but I did want to talk about this right here, because Ohio State won a big recruiting battle, and the kid James People had Alabama in the top 6. I think it was Alabama, TCU, Oregon, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Miami. It wasn't Miami. That's not right. I forget number 6, but it'll come to me.
I know there was really 3 schools that were in the hunt.
Yes,
for serious consideration, and Ohio State ended up being. It was Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Alabama that were the 3 schools that were right there. And
but for people's perspective here, Ohio State wasn't the first choice. Let's just put that out there. Ohio State was not number 1. Ohio State was taken because of another situation that happened where basically he was like, all right, let's lock this down because I don't want to be in this position again.
Yeah. But what stood out to me is after Peoples committed to Ohio State, did y'all see what Hayes Fawcett tweeted?
Oh, yeah, about Ohio State and Michigan and how close they are in recruiting together, but how Ohio State and Michigan have the most momentum on the recruiting trail. And it's 100% true, because I'll say this. Michigan might land a offensive lineman that the University of Oklahoma really want after a visit over this past weekend. Maybe 2 of them. There are 2 prospects that Oklahoma was looking at that went to Michigan.
And who's the Michigan offensive line coach? Why does his name escape? Look, Bill Bedenbaugh is that guy. Michigan has got a dude up there at an offensive line coach. Yeah,
And
an
here's the
absolute
thing.
dude.
If people really want to talk about NIL money, you talk about the Big Ten and how much alumni comes out of these Big Ten schools. Ohio State and Michigan, they've got their NIL collectives together. Let's just put it that way.
That's a great point. F for fanatics. That's
a really interesting question.
Well, me and Zach talk about that all the time, and
yeah. Talk to us about that.
Because Zach is a huge Buckeye fan, and we do that together. Brian Hartline is a very integral part of the Buckeyes recruiting, and I say this about Alabama, and I say this about Ohio State. As long as Nick Saban is at Alabama, and as long as Brian Hartline is at Ohio State, they're going to continue to recruit at a high level, especially with Brian Hartline at Ohio State, because he understands. He's like DeMarco Murray is at Oklahoma. He's been at every level. He knows how to get these guys. He knows how to recruit them. He knows how to speak to them where they're at, And
great point.
He builds a great relationship with these guys, and he has a track record of coaching some amazing receivers.
Great question, Cody.
Do you want to know the sad truth is? I think he's a better recruiter than Ryan Day. And I think Ryan Day might get the kid.
Well, Ryan Day knows that.
I know. And I think Ryan Day might get the kid.
Yeah, I don't know that that's like even a bad thing. I think Hartline is one of the top recruiters in the nation.
Well, and most head coaches will not say that they're good recruiters. They will always put it on their staff. I couldn't do this without my staff. Yeah.
But also, I will say this: Brian Hartline has turned down head coaching jobs to stay at Ohio State.
Yeah, because it's not been elite head coaching job.
I know. I'm just saying. I don't really think Brian Hartline wants to leave Ohio State. Is the thing?
No, certainly not. I mean, why would you?
And honestly, if Ohio State loses to Michigan again, which is a very good possibility,
very real.
Ryan Day's out. Ryan Day is out because they're not doing what they did last year.
Michigan is one of the most interesting teams in the nation because of what they return. Yep. And Ohio State, they have talent. There's nobody that's going to look at Ohio State's roster and say you're devout of talent. CJ Stroud isn't there.
Experience.
But you want to know what Ohio State and Michigan are? It's literally the Big 12's representation of OU and Texas. Ohio State gets all of the talented guys all of the time, and then you've got Michigan, and Michigan's just consistently good.
But the difference with Ohio State is they've actually won playoff games.
I'm talking about more so in recruiting, right? I'm talking about more so in recruiting. Yeah. Ohio State's always up there with the top classes, and Michigan's just they're good. They're consistent.
Well, how crazy is this? How crazy is this, guys? But a few years ago, this was flipped. We were talking about Jim Harbaugh on the hot seat.
No,
and how drastic of a change has it been the last couple of years because of that game?
But
it's the same way with OU Texas. It's the same way with, Alabama Auburn in years past. It's you have to beat your rival.
Well, and don't you think it's because Jim Harbaugh did not want to go to just this full blown air raid offense, which he knew wasn't going to last forever. And so he continued to go out there and recruit the trenches really well. And then all of a sudden, what do? You see this game trending back to a little bit more slowly, but it's happening we got to get the running backs. You got to have good running backs. You got to have a good deep offensive line because you got to be able to pound the ball. But you got to be able to have an explosive offense at the same time.
I only think it only goes so far because you have to have a balanced attack. You have to be able to do like you saw with TCU. They tried that game against Georgia.
They're going out there and they're getting the 5-star in JJ McCarthy, and then they just got that 5-star in. I'm totally blanking on his name in 2024.
Jaden Davis.
Yeah. But the thing is with Michigan is they have consistently went out there and recruited the running backs really well, the offensive line really well. I mean, a lot of people I think had concerns for the offensive line for Michigan last year, and I was like, that's their strong point with all the guys they brought into the transfer portal. And I think with Michigan, again, they've got that kind of that same core foundation going into this next year. And with what we saw from JJ McCarthy, I'm like, well, he can only get better. And I think Michigan is going to be kind of like what we see from Oklahoma. They can go and they can pound the ball on you, but when they need to score, they've got a quarterback back there that can sling the ball and score pretty quickly.
But I think Michigan and Oklahoma are a lot alike because they have really good talent. They can get to the peak, but they can't get on top of the mountain yet. And so, F for Fanatics, I think he either goes to the NFL or if Ryan Day gets fired, he becomes the head coach at Ohio State. I don't think he leaves for any other job.
And let's be honest here, boys. If they lose 3 in a row,
Ryan Day's out.
Well, yeah, he's out. But I think if you're an Ohio State fan, I think that's probably what you're wanting. I think at this point you would want Ryan Day to go, and you'd want to keep Brian Hartline. Because Brian Hartline is the guy that's got you those quarterbacks, those wide receivers, and those running backs.
Well, not the quarterbacks, but
I don't doubt he could.
Yeah, he's an integral.
I mean, here's the deal: if I'm a quarterback and I see this wide receiver talent this guy is bringing in, I want to go there because
those guys are recruiting each other.
Yeah,
but yeah, if he loses to Michigan this year, yeah, he's got the axe. His seat is sizzling this year.
Yeah, that's why I said this is such an interesting year. And Ohio State, I talked about it earlier. I said Texas is on the short list of teams. If you asked, hey, Ty, what teams are you most interested in? I'm going to say Alabama, and that's not even bias. They have to replace Will Anderson. They have to replace both safeties. They have to replace both middle linebackers. They have to replace Bryce Young. They have to replace Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, that's an interesting situation.
I would say that's one of the teams that's on my 5. I'll put actually. Well, I'll put together my top 5 teams that I'm most intrigued to see, and I'll drop them in I'll drop them in the comments here. But I'll wait till Friday. We do that Friday.
We'll wait till Friday. I think that's a great way to kick off Friday. 5 teams we're most interested in.
I'll put together 5. Yeah.
I think
I can put them off for you right now. This is a good topic.
Yeah, we'll wait till Friday. That way we keep it all in there.
Hey, but and hear from you too. We would like to know your guys is out there what you think about the teams that you're most intrigued to see as well.
Ooh, we got it. We got an Oklahoma fan willing to put something on the line for this Bama Texas game, and this is what makes this so much fun.
For the red, that's boy.
You know what? I'm not sticking myself to it, but I will say this, Blood. Come to the stream on Friday. We'll talk more. I might throw myself in here. We might both show up to the Red River rivalry in full Texas gear if Bama loses that game. We might both do that.
It ain't gonna happen.
Hey, man, it could. It's gonna be a great game. It's gonna be so much fun.
It's in Tuscaloosa. It's gonna be probably a 2:30 game because that'll be the CBS game, or will they make
Probably. It's going to be so much fun, man.
Oh, awesome it's going to be Texas is not ready for that atmosphere. They're not.
We'll see.
Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and get out of here. That way we can have everybody get to where they need to go in a timely manner. Look at us. We wanted to do an hour stream, and for once, we were able to do it. We didn't go over.
2 minutes to spare.
Yeah, we didn't go over, right? Like all 30 minutes, 45 minutes like we always do. We're here.
We didn't set the Guinness Book of World Records for our longest show, so.
Yeah, silent. No doubt. Saban's been just so consistent. But Texas, they return a lot, man. It's going to be a fun time. A lot of fun. But, guys, before we get out of here, let the people know where they can find all of your great content.
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube, Apple, Google, or Spotify, The PG Show. We're actually going to record more interviews for guys that were on campus during the Future Freaks week, which, I mean, listen, that was such a big weekend. It's hard to get everybody in 1 week. So we're going to have more interviews talking about their visits, how they feel, kind of what's going on, kind of giving you guys a little more insight to what goes on during a visit like that, because that
awesome.
Was a huge weekend for Oklahoma.
That's going to be so much fun because I think we had talked about that before, or I was like, oh, it's awesome you have that many players there, but how do you cater to each individual? And then I think y'all were telling me, or someone told me on Twitter, they're like, oh, no. It's like the guys that are committable, right? Like right now, they're really getting a lot of attention. And for everybody else, it's like a learning time. And I was like, that's awesome. Super interested in that. Drew, tell the people where they can find your stuff.
Hey, the Anything OU podcast, we drop all kinds of great stuff across Sooner sports landscape. You can find us over on YouTube. Just search Anything OU podcast. You'll find us. Apple, Google, Spotify, all the social media platforms, and then the Under Official Review podcast. We're kind of taking a break here the next couple of weeks, but we'll rolling some stuff out as far as college football content and NFL draft coming up as well. We'll be talking some of our boards, some of our drafts, stuff like that. But always around, always jumping on with Ty and Jay and all these other guys, and we just love to chop it up and talk sports, and more specifically the world of college football. So always happy to be on.
Absolutely, man. We will be back Friday, 5:30. I'll let y'all know the exact time, but until then, see ya. Look at this spin.